You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, as we head into the second Trump administration, some rare glimmer of silver lining here is that Rudy Giuliani himself, has yet to figure out how to keep himself out of trouble. Can you explain what just happened in court today and what it signals for Giuliani moving forward?
Yeah, in the ongoing saga of Rudy Giuliani apparently trying to hide his assets from the two Georgia state election workers that he defamed, he savaged, whose lives he endangered, Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman. There was yet another court hearing to see whether Rudy should be held in contempt for continuing to evade court orders, for continuing to play games by apparently hiding his assets. So today, Rudy Giuliani actually had the opportunity to testify, and I read as many accounts as I could, Brian. There wasn't a whole lot reported. I don't know how long he actually testified, but a couple of the more amusing bits of information that came out of today's contempt hearing, and by the way, the judge has not ruled on the contempt yet, were two things that caught my attention. One is Rudy Giuliani, during his testimony, was apparently complaining that he doesn't feel like he's been given enough time by the judge to fully comply with the repeated court orders to turn over all his assets. And he actually said something along the lines of, "Judge, in my other 15 to 20 cases, judges gave me much more time to comply with court orders." That doesn't sound like the strongest defense of your position. This from a guy who not only has, by his account, 15 or 20 cases pending against him, but who has also been disbarred as a lawyer in New York and disbarred as a lawyer in Washington, D.C. for the way he, handled the litigation into the 2020 election challenges. So the other thing that I have to share with our viewers is apparently one of the things that offended Rudy Giuliani most about today's court proceedings was the rendering of him by the courtroom sketch artist, and he is quoted in today's reporting as complaining that the courtroom sketch artist, quote, "made me look like my dog." No, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, that seems pretty par for the course as far as Rudy Giuliani is concerned. Glenn, as far as handing over these assets to Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman are concerned, when are we going to get some response from the judge in terms of whether they will allow this or deny it?
The judge indicated he wouldn't rule on the contempt motion today, but it sounds like he will probably rule fairly soon, perhaps in the coming days or in the next week or so, and then he'll decide what, if any, sanctions to impose. Even though this is a civil defamation case, the way Rudy Giuliani has been playing these games and sort of inching his way toward contempt of court, he could very well be confined. A judge can order somebody confined for contempt of court, and what the judge will do is virtually give the defendant or the litigant in the case who is held in contempt the keys to the jail cell and say, Mr. Giuliani, all you have to do is comply with the court's orders to turn over your assets, and you will purge the contempt. You can walk out of the cell. So, it looks like he has been trying the judge's patience, and it may actually come to that. Now, the next concrete step in the case that we know of is in early January. There is a mini trial set, and it is specifically set for the judge to determine whether Rudy Giuliani also has to relinquish or turn over to Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman his condo in Florida. He has already been ordered to turn over, I think, his $6 million apartment in New York City, and he reportedly has been playing games, kind of getting the title or the necessary paperwork over to them. But it's still an open question as to whether the court will also order that he has to give over his Florida condo to try to satisfy that money judgment that was awarded against him.
Glenn, this is all taking place in the Manhattan Federal District Court. So this is the federal court system. Does that mean that Donald Trump could come into office, issue a pardon to Giuliani, and wipe all of this away?
No. Presidential pardons only apply to federal criminal cases, not civil matters. So Donald Trump has no lawful vehicle to weigh in and interfere in or alter the course of this civil litigation between two private litigants.
Is there anything that Giuliani could do to evade accountability, evade being held responsible for giving his assets over to Shamos and Ruby Freeman? Like we're at the 11th hour now. So is there anything that's going to come in and is there going to be any white knight for Giuliani, or is he just subject to what the court tells him to do, and he has no recourse moving forward?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, he already tried bankruptcy, but his case in bankruptcy was discharged by the bankruptcy judge when the judge deemed that Rudy Giuliani was not being truthful or transparent in the way he was proceeding in bankruptcy court. Shocking, I know. Now, Rudy could also try to find some angel donor, some billionaire, some oligarch who would be willing to step in and, make Rudy whole, satisfy that massive money judgment that was awarded against him. Or finally, he could always just try to, flee the country. I don't think that likely for an 80-year-old man. Of course, don't forget, he's also still pending criminal charges, including down in Georgia, where he is an indicted RICO defendant as part of Fani Willis's ongoing RICO prosecution down in Georgia, which is kind of stuck in the appellate process down there right now.
Glenn, this is a little bit of a political question here, but do you think that there's any incentive for, let's say, a certain billionaire oligarch who has been bankrolling all of Donald Trump's activities for them to swoop in and try and save Giuliani? Does he even confer any advantage whatsoever to Trump at this point?
It's a great question. I don't know what moves oligarchs to action to, throw the little pittance Rudy Giuliani's way that would be, that would be represented by some oligarch making Giuliani whole for this money judgment. I don't know what the upside is. I don't know what the investment in Rudy Giuliani would be perceived as being for some, billionaire, some oligarch. But, these days, never say never.
I would have to guess, if I had to make some type of a prediction here, that Donald Trump and by association Elon Musk, whoever is acting as Trump's human wallet at the moment, that he won't find any reason to actually extend himself to Giuliani. What Trump has shown by virtue of his actions over and over and over again, whether it's the Michael Cohens of the world, whether it's even Ronna McDaniel, Kayleigh McEnany, is that once he loses his need for somebody, once they become politically inconvenient for him, he's perfectly content to throw them under the bus. And he does that almost without fail to every single person in his orbit. The thing is that loyalty only works one way when it comes to Donald Trump. And so they will give it to him and he does not have to give it back. That's how it works. It is a one-way street as far as Trump is concerned. And so in this instance, where Giuliani not only doesn't confer any benefit, it's not like he's some superstar lawyer, but in fact, he actually offers some of a disadvantage. He's a humiliation for anybody who he's surrounded with. I don't think Trump wants him in his orbit by virtue of the fact that the lasting image of this guy is standing in a parking lot of a landscaping store right next to a sex shop with hair dye dripping down his face, arguing some nonsense about the stolen election that he was unable to prove at any point in court. And so he is a joke. He has become a laughingstock. And I think the fact that he is now in such a dire situation in his professional and financial life, he only looks more kind of pathetic to Trump, who has really swapped out for somebody who he views in Elon Musk as a step up from the Giulianis of the world. So, if you were to ask me, I wouldn't really find any indication that he's going to stick his neck out for Giuliani, even though, look, Giuliani's in this mess in the first place solely because of his blind fealty to Trump himself. But again, that's how it works in the Trump orbit, is that loyalty is a one-way street. You give it over and over and over, and in return, you expect exactly nothing.
Yeah, underneath a Trump bus is a very crowded place indeed, and few people seem to make it out once they've been thrown under that bus.
Right, I couldn't agree more. And the only thing more pathetic than these people bending over backwards to give their loyalty to Donald Trump is the fact that none of them recognize that all of this loyalty won't be reciprocated just like it's not reciprocated for anybody else. That's the only thing worse than them giving it is their inability to understand that they're also not special, and he will treat them the way that he's treated everybody else that came before them and will continue to treat everybody else that comes after. With that said, we will of course stay on top of what happens with Rudy Giuliani as he continues to flounder his way through his legal escapades here. So for those watching, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.